Welcome back to Bigjuicyhog Gaming. Today we're going back to where it all started. Not World of Warcraft, not even Warcraft III, but the very first game that launched one of gaming's most iconic franchises, Warcraft Orcs and Humans, released by Blizzard Entertainment in 1994. Before there were raids and battlegrounds, before there were night elves and blood elves, before Arthas picked up Frostmourne and doomed his soul, there was a simple story. Humans versus orcs, the Kingdom of Azeroth versus the Orcish Horde, civilization versus invasion. But even in this relatively straightforward setup, Blizzard planted seeds that would grow into one of the richest fantasy universes in gaming. The First War, as it came to be known in Warcraft lore, set everything else in motion. The rise of the Horde, the fall of kingdoms, and conflicts that would echo across decades of games. Today we're diving into the complete story of Warcraft Orcs and Humans, the lore behind both campaigns, the key characters who would shape the future of Azeroth, and how this humble RTS from 1994 created a universe that millions still explore today. Let's set the stage. The Kingdom of Azeroth, later renamed Stormwind to avoid confusion with the world name, was a prosperous human nation on the continent of Azeroth. It was a time of relative peace, the kind that makes kingdoms complacent. The kingdom was ruled by a King Llane, a just and beloved monarch who genuinely cared about his people. His closest advisor was Anduin Lothar, the king's champion and one of the greatest warriors in the realm. The kingdom's magical defense was overseen by the court conjurer, a powerful mage named Medivh, who lived in his tower of Karazhan. The humans of Azeroth knew nothing of other worlds. They had their internal politics, their minor disputes with neighbor kingdoms, their struggles with bandits, and the occasional Gnoll or Murloc raid. Life was good, life was normal. They had no idea that the world was about to be invaded by an alien race from another dimension. To understand the horde that invaded Azeroth, we need to understand where they came from. The orcs were native to a dying world called Draenor, a harsh but survivable planet where orcish clans lived as shamanistic, honor-bound warriors. The orcs weren't originally the bloodthirsty monsters that humans would come to fear. They were a warrior culture, certainly, but they lived in balance with the spiritual forces of their world, guided by shamans who communed with the elements. Different clans had different traditions, but they shared common values of strength, honor, and respect for their ancestors. But Draenor was dying. Its resources were depleting. The world itself seemed to be withering. The orcs faced a future of slow starvation and extinction. Enter Gul'dan, the most ambitious and ruthless of the orcish warlocks. Unlike the traditional shamans, Gul'dan had turned to the darker powers, fel magic, the corrupt energy of demons and chaos. He promised the orcs salvation, a portal to a new world rich with resources ripe for conquest. What the orcs didn't know was that Gul'dan served the Burning Legion, an army of demons dedicated to destroying all life in the universe. The Legion wanted access to Azeroth, but they needed a mortal army to serve as their vanguard. The desperate dying orcs were perfect tools. Gul'dan united the orcish clans under Blackhand the Destroyer as war chief, creating the Horde, a massive army bent on conquest. He fed them demon blood, corrupting them, making them stronger but also more savage and bloodthirsty. The green-skinned, red-eyed monsters that would invade Azeroth were not what the orcs had been, but what Gul'dan's corruption had made them. The creation of the Dark Portal, a gateway between Draenor and Azeroth, required immense magical power. Gul'dan provided the fel magic, but on the Azeroth side, the portal needed an anchor, a conduit for the energy. That conduit was Medivh, the guardian of Tirisfal. Here's where things get complicated. Medivh was supposed to be Azeroth's greatest defender, imbued with the power of all previous guardians to protect the world from magical threats. But Medivh had a dark secret. Before he was even born, his mother Egwene had defeated an avatar of Sargeras, the fallen titan who led the Burning Legion. Or so she thought. Sargeras' essence had infected her, and when she gave birth to Medivh, that demonic presence passed to her son. For years, Medivh was a normal, if powerful mage, but as he grew into his power, the demon within awakened, taking control of him more and more frequently. The possessed Medivh, under Sargeras' influence, contacted Gul'dan, and together they opened the portal. Medivh didn't do this as a conscious betrayal. The demon within him was using his body and power while his true consciousness was suppressed or struggling for control. When the dark portal finally opened in the Black Morass, a swamp in the southern reaches of the Kingdom of Azeroth, the first war began. Let's start with the Horde's perspective, because in Warcraft Orcs and Humans, you could play as either side and the Horde had their own story to tell. The first orcs through the portal were scouts and raiders. They established a beachhead in the Black Morass, building crude fortifications and testing the defenses of this new world. What they found pleased them: soft, unprepared humans living in prosperity, completely unaware of what was coming. The early missions for the Horde involved raiding human settlements, stealing resources, and building up their forces. Each success brought more orcs through the portal. Each victory proved that this was ripe for conquest. Behind the scenes, Gul'dan had established the Shadow Council, a secret cabal of warlocks who truly controlled the Horde, while Blackhand served as their figurehead war chief. The Shadow Council's goal wasn't just conquest, it was to prepare Azeroth for the Burning Legion's eventual arrival. Among the Shadow Council's members was Garona, a half-orc assassin whose loyalty would become crucial to the war's outcome. There was also Cho'Gall, a two-headed ogre mage of tremendous power. These figures operated in the shadows, manipulating events while warriors like Ogrim Doomhammer fought on the front lines. Blackhand the Destroyer, the nominal leader of the Horde, chosen for his strength and ferocity rather than his intelligence. He was a brutal warrior who led from the front, but he was ultimately a puppet of the Shadow Council. Ogrim Doomhammer, Blackhand's second in command and one of the greatest Orcish warriors. Unlike many in the Horde, Doomhammer retained some sense of Orcish honor and would eventually become suspicious of Gul'dan's machinations. Gul'dan, the true power behind the Horde, serving the Legion while pretending to serve Orcish interests. His fell magic made him powerful, but it also made him corrupt, ambitious, and ultimately treacherous. Garona Halforson, the mysterious half-orc assassin who served as a spy and occasionally as a conscience for the Horde. Her mixed heritage made her an outsider among both orcs and humans. As players progressed through the Horde campaign, missions grew more ambitious. Early missions, raid farms and lumber mills, establish bases, scout human defenses. Mid-missions, attack small towns and military outposts, destroy guard towers, eliminate human heroes. Late missions, assault major cities, destroy the human military infrastructure, push towards the capital. The Horde's advance was relentless. The humans, unprepared for such an organized invasion from an unknown enemy, fell back time and again. Villages burned, towns were overrun. The Kingdom of Azeroth was being conquered, piece by piece. The assassination of King Llane. The climax of the Horde campaign involved a mission that would echo through Warcraft lore for decades. The assassination of King Llane Wrynn in his own throne room. Garona, operating under Shadow Council orders and possibly magical compulsion, infiltrated Stormwind Keep and murdered King Llane. Some sources suggest she did this reluctantly, having developed respect for the Human King. Others suggest she was mind-controlled. But the result was the same. The Kingdom of Azeroth's leader was dead, his nation was thrown into chaos, and the Horde's victory seemed inevitable. In the Horde's version of events, they successfully conquered the Kingdom of Azeroth, driving the surviving humans into exile across the sea and claiming this new world as their own. The first war ended in total Horde victory. Now let's look at the other side of the conflict, the human campaign where players defended the Kingdom of Azeroth against the alien invasion. When reports first reached Stormwind Keep of strange green-skinned creatures attacking border settlements, many nobles dismissed them as exaggerations or drunken fantasies. Orcs from another world? Clearly impossible. But as more refugees flooded into cities, as entire villages disappeared overnight, as survivors told consistent stories of these savage invaders, the kingdom was forced to acknowledge the truth. They were at war with an enemy unlike anything they'd faced. The Defenders of Azeroth. King Llane Wrynn, the beloved monarch who had ruled in peace, was forced to become a war leader. He was charismatic, brave, and genuinely concerned about his people. Qualities that made him a good peacetime king, but perhaps too trusting for a time of treachery. Anduin Lothar, the king's champion and the kingdom's greatest warrior. Lothar was a military genius and a hero to the common soldiers. He would lead from the front, inspiring troops through personal courage and tactical brilliance. Medivh the Guardian, Supposedly the king's magical protector, Medivh provided counsel to the king, though his advice was increasingly erratic as his internal struggle with Sargeras' possession intensified. Khadgar, a young apprentice sent to study under Medivh. Khadgar would discover the terrible truth about the Guardian and play a crucial role in the war's outcome. The human missions in Warcraft Orcs and Humans told a story of increasingly desperate defense. Early missions: investigate reports of strange creatures, defend farms and villages, eliminate Orcish scouts. Mid-missions: retake captured towns, destroy Orcish bases, defend major settlements from assault. Late missions: launch counteroffensive against Horde strongholds, assault their bases, drive them back towards the Dark Portal. Unlike the Horde's straightforward conquest, the human campaign involved a mix of defense and counterattack. You couldn't just turtle in your base, you had to actively hunt down and destroy Orcish forces before they overwhelmed your kingdom's defenses. One of the most crucial plot points in the human campaign was Khadgar's discovery that Medivh, the guardian of Tirisfal, the man supposed to protect Azeroth from magical threats, was actually the one who had opened the Dark Portal and allowed the invasion. Khadgar, studying under Medivh at Karazhan, began noticing strange inconsistencies in his master's behavior. Medivh would disappear for days. He would speak in voices not his own. The tower was filled with dark magic and demonic artifacts. Eventually, Khadgar pieced together the truth and brought this information to King Llane and Lothar. The revelation was devastating. Their greatest magical defender was actually working for the enemy. One of the human campaign's climactic missions involved storming Karazhan and confronting Medivh. This wasn't just a military operation, it was a battle against one of the most powerful mages in existence, a man possessed by a fragment of a dark god. The battle was brutal. Medivh, fully possessed by Sargeras, wielded power that slaughtered entire squads of soldiers with a single spell. But eventually, through combined effort and Khadgar's anti-magic, the possessed guardian was defeated. In his final moments, with Sargeras' influence broken by death, Medivh's true consciousness emerged. He realized what he'd done, what he'd allowed to happen. His last words were apologies and warnings about threats still to come. With Medivh's death, the magical energy sustaining the Dark Portal faltered, but didn't fully collapse. The damage was done. The Horde was already established in Azeroth. In the human version of events, the Kingdom of Azeroth successfully repelled the Horde invasion. Through tactical brilliance, heroic sacrifice, and the elimination of the traitor Medivh, the humans destroyed Orcish bases, killed their leaders, and drove the surviving Orcs back through the Dark Portal. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. The kingdom had been devastated. Countless villages lay in ruins. A generation of young men had died in defense of their homes, and everyone knew that if the Orcs could open one portal, they might open another. Here's where things get interesting from a lore perspective. Both campaigns in Warcraft Orcs and Humans present their side winning. The Horde campaign ends with total conquest. The human campaign ends with a successful defense. When Warcraft II Tides of Darkness was released, Blizzard had to reconcile these contradictory endings. They did this by establishing a canon version of events that incorporated elements from both campaigns. The Horde did successfully invade and conquered most of the Kingdom of Azeroth. King Llane was assassinated by Garona. Medivh was discovered as a traitor and killed at Karazhan. The surviving humans, led by Anduin Lothar and Prince Varian, Llane's son, fled across the sea to Lordaeron. The Horde occupied the ruins of Stormwind but didn't completely annihilate the human forces. This created the setup for Warcraft II, the human refugees rallying the kingdoms of Lordaeron to form the Alliance, while the Horde brought more forces through the Dark Portal to continue their conquest of Azeroth. The First War became known as a Horde victory, but not a total one. The humans survived to fight another day, and that survival would matter immensely in conflicts to come. Several characters from Warcraft, Orcs and Humans would go on to play major roles in the franchise. Anduin Lothar became the supreme commander of the Alliance forces in Warcraft II. His leadership during the Second War would make him a legendary figure in Alliance history. He would eventually die fighting Orgrim Doomhammer in single combat, but his sacrifice inspired victory. Orgrim Doomhammer killed Blackhand and took control of the Horde, discovering Gul'dan's treachery too late to fully root it out. He would lead the Horde in Warcraft II with more honor than his predecessor, though still committed to conquest. Gul'dan survived the First War, but his ambitions would eventually lead to his doom. His quest for power and immortality would splinter the Horde at a crucial moment in Warcraft II, contributing to their defeat. Garona disappeared after assassinating King Llane, her fate becoming one of Warcraft's enduring mysteries. She would eventually return in later lore with her half-human son, Medivh, though Medivh was later retconned from canon. Khadgar, the young apprentice, aged prematurely during the battle with Medivh, becoming the white-haired old man despite his youth. He would become one of Azeroth's most powerful and important mages, playing crucial roles in conflicts across multiple games. Prince Varian Wrynn. Still a child during the First War, Llane's son survived the fall of Stormwind and fled with Lothar to Lordaeron. He would eventually reclaim his kingdom and rule as one of the Alliance's greatest kings in World of Warcraft. Warcraft Orcs and Humans might seem primitive by modern standards, simple graphics, basic unit types, limited AI, but its impact on gaming cannot be overstated. For the RTS genre, while it wasn't the first real-time strategy game, Warcraft helped define the modern RTS formula. Resource gathering, base building, unit production, tech trees, mechanics that would be refined in Warcraft II, and perfected in StarCraft all started here. For Blizzard Entertainment, this was the game that put Blizzard on the map as a major developer. Its success funded Warcraft II, which funded Diablo and StarCraft, creating a dynasty of gaming franchises. For fantasy gaming, Warcraft's accessible, slightly cartoonish art style and its focus on epic conflicts rather than Tolkien-esque complexity made fantasy gaming more accessible. It wasn't trying to be a serious simulation, it was trying to be fun. For Warcraft lore, every major plot point in World of Warcraft traces back to seeds planted in the first game. The Dark Portal and the interdimensional invasion, the corruption of the Horde by fell magic, the fall of Stormwind and the exile of its people, Medivh's possession and the Guardian's legacy, the beginnings of the Human-Orc conflict that would define Azeroth's history. Even mechanics and units from the original game became lore elements. Necrolites, Orcish necromancers, would evolve into the Death Knight concept. The Conjurer and Warlock units established Human and Orcish magic users. Simple buildings like town halls and barracks became the architectural style of their factions. Interestingly, much of the deeper lore about the First War was added retroactively in later games and novels. The original Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, was actually pretty light on the story exposition. Added later, Medivh's backstory and Egwin's battle with Sargeras, the Burning Legion's role in corrupting the Horde, detailed Orcish culture before corruption, the Shadow Council's internal politics, Garona's mixed heritage and complex loyalties, the specific details of King Llane's assassination, Varian Wrynn's childhood escape from Stormwind. The manual for the original game provided some story, but it was fairly bare bones compared to the rich lore that would develop. Early Warcraft was more about gameplay than narrative. The storytelling would become Blizzard's focus in later titles. This actually worked in the franchise's favor. The simple foundation of Orcs invade, Humans defend was flexible enough to support decades of expanded lore without breaking the core narrative. Warcraft, Orcs and Humans launched in 1994 with a simple premise: 2 armies, 1 world, winner takes all. But from that simple beginning grew a universe that would captivate millions of players across multiple games and over 3 decades. The First War set everything in motion. Without it, there's no Second War. Without the Second War, there's no Third War. Without the Third War, there's no World of Warcraft. Every expansion, every raid, every character players love in modern WoW traces its lineage back to the first RTS, where you commanded peasants to build farms and footmen to defend them. If you've only experienced Warcraft through World of Warcraft or even Warcraft III, going back to the original game is a fascinating experience. The graphics are primitive, the interface is clunky, the pathfinding is atrocious, but you can see the DNA of everything that came after. You can see Anduin Lothar becoming the hero whose name would be given to Varian's son. You can see Orgrim Doomhammer forging the Horde into an honorable force. You can see Medivh's corruption creating the Karazhan that WoW players would raid decades later. The Dark Portal opened in 1994, and in many ways, it never truly closed. The First War may be ancient history in Azeroth's timeline, but it's the foundation everything else was built on. Thanks for joining Bigjuicyhog Gaming for this deep dive into where Warcraft began. Whether you're a veteran who played the original game or a WoW player curious about the franchise's roots, I hope this exploration of the First War gave you new appreciation for how it all started. What are your memories of the original Warcraft? Did you play it back in the day? Were you born yet? How do you think it holds up compared to modern RTS games? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this lore deep dive, make sure to subscribe for more gaming history, lore analysis, and retrospective on classic games. We've got more Warcraft content coming, including Warcraft II and beyond if you're interested. This is Bigjuicyhog Gaming reminding you that every epic saga starts with a simple story. For Warcraft, that story was, orcs arrive, humans fight back, and nothing in Azeroth has ever been the same. Stay legendary and keep gaming.